No, I did the foreword to Amy Alcon's book, Mean Girls. And I have a footnote in there that's just, I forget what the footnote is even in reference to, but it just says, "Sorry, my father loved me, Emily." Still a little spicy about it.
Your next favorite podcast pick starts now. Here's the Professor and Heather Ann.
Welcome to the Professor and Heather Ann. Although we don't have all the answers, we hope we can encourage and excite you. We're here sharing our lives to inspire you to make the most of the second half of your life.
And today's episode is about friendship. And we will have as our guest Professor Jamie Krems, who is doing amazing research about friendship. But before we get to her, though, we're going to talk about our own friendship experiences. And I am envious of you, Heather, because your best friend is someone that you've been best friends with since you were 8 years old.
Yes.
I wish I had something like I have a few friends. None of them are super close anymore, but I have a few friends that I met in grad school. So that's when it was in my 20s. I don't know. I'm not in contact at all with anyone from before that.
Because of social media, I'm actually in contact with a lot of people that I've been friends with since elementary. My best friend and I have been best friends since we were 8. We met in the 3rd grade, and we just hit it off, and we've been besties ever since. And as we have shared in previous episodes, we're actually moving to be their next door neighbors. We used to live down the street from each other, and now we're going to be neighbors again. And we are very excited and very appreciative that our husbands are willing to do this, because you just jumped in and was like, let's do it. So we're excited for the next chapter for our lives and building that relationship even stronger. And her and I have just scheduled a girls' weekend for just a couple of weeks that we move there. So we're very excited.
And when we tell people this, so many people say, "Oh, I wish I could do that."
And talking about social media and stuff, I am in contact with a lot of people that I, again, went to school with since elementary school. I was very fortunate that I went to the same school. So that helped build those friendships and those bonds. I just had one of my high school friends reach out the other day and talk about some stuff that we did when we were in high school. We talked about how she was there for me when everything happened with my parents. And, she was just reaching out. She just had some questions and stuff and she's like, I remember doing this. And again, that's a whole nother episode, and wanted to make sure. She's like, did I make a difference? And it's like, you made a difference. And we've talked about that as well, is that my friends and the sports that I did in growing up was the positive things that happened into my life and changed the trajectory of my life because of those friendships. And because I still have many of those friendships now, and especially with my best friend. But I know that's not normal for everybody. And I know that I'm fortunate to have that. I know my middle sister is the same way. She still has her best friend in her life that we had since our childhood.
I never had any rupture of a relation. I never had a falling out with a friend, but most of the friendships from my early life just sort of drifted apart. We stayed kind of in touch in college, and maybe if social media had existed then, it would have been easier to stay in touch. I think we're gonna talk later in this episode about social media, and of course, it has very destructive effects on social relationships, but it can also have very positive effects,
which it has for me. It's helped me connect with people that I grew up with, people that, there's a lot of times when we're on social media and we'll be laughing and talking about something, and we call our the old hood, the Oildale hood is what we call it. And we talk about through social media and stuff, we talk about the crazy stuff we did when we were kids and running around the neighborhood and all of that fun stuff. So it's fun to relive and be able to relive those positive things that happened to me in my childhood. So I'm very excited about our next guest. Not only is she doing amazing things with her career and the research of friendship, but she's also a friend of yours and a friend of mine.
Yes, a friend who studies friendship.
A friend that studies friendship.
So Jamie Krems is Associate Professor of Psychology at UCLA and the co-founder and director of the UCLA Center for Friendship Research. Her undergraduate degree from Bryn Mawr is in classical and Near Eastern archaeology. So this is a serious education.
Very serious.
And then she got her PhD in psychology from Arizona State. I met her when she was in grad school at conferences of the Human Behavior and Evolution Society, HBES. And then in 2018, she joined the faculty in psychology at Oklahoma State. And so when I moved from LA to Stillwater, Oklahoma in 2022, she was part of the evolutionary psychology group there. So we hung out a lot that year. But then in 2023, she started her current job at UCLA. And
which went, by the way, I find very fascinating. You moved from UCLA to Stillwater. She moved from Stillwater to UCLA.
Right. It doesn't seem like a trade.
She went forward. You just, heading to Oklahoma now.
So, Jamie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. I just really want to dive into all the great research and the projects that you're doing now. Obviously, friendship means a great deal to me. I'm fascinated by your research because of, like I said, my best friend and I have been best friends for 49 years. So let's just jump in.
So first, it's one of these things everyone thinks they know what it is, but do they really know what it is? So how would you define what is a friend or what is friendship?
Oh, that's a great question. So when you're a friendship researcher, you do get bombarded with this question. And the thing that people love to remind me, especially if they're not Americans, is what we Americans call a friend is kind of bullshit. Is not the highest bar. Because, if you're a French person or you're an Israeli, what you call a friend, what that word means is something kind of more serious, somebody that's really there for you. And Americans are pretty promiscuous with who we call friend. An acquaintance to many other people might be a friend for us. So that's one of the first things you realize. There are some really fun words and terms for friends around the world. So in Western Tibet, there's a culture that calls friends something that translates to happiness, grief, identical. And Mortlakese speakers living in atolls around Micronesia call friend something that translates to brother from another canoe. So there are a lot of different words for it all around the world. There are different kind of flavors to it around the world. And what we think of friendship in the West is not necessarily what friendship looks like across the world. So Dan Hrushka looked at the Human Relations Area Files, that compendium of ethnographic data, to try to see what characterized friendship in 60 small-scale societies. And when you look at the data that he came away with, it seems like friends are people who absolutely help one another, especially when one another is in need. This helping is motivated by feelings of affection. And these feelings of affection are ratcheted up over time by giving of gifts and favors. So that's a friend, somebody that you help when they're in need and helps you when you're in need.
What I really like is what you just said is that friendship in other countries is looked upon differently than here in the States, because I kind of think of friendship that way myself. I have a lot of acquaintances. I only have a few very close friends, and my one true friend that we know all of each other's secrets and things like that. So
I think that's the body friend.
Yes, that's fascinating. So how did you get interested in this topic?
So it turns out I've always been interested in this topic. I just didn't realize it. I started trying to understand why. So I had these two very close female friends, Emily and Mia. One had been my friend since I was 5 years old. The other I met at Bryn Mawr, and she lived with me, and we went on vacations together. We were living in Philly. And they had this 2-hour G-chat conversation exclusively about how much they hated me behind my back. And I found it because that idiot Mia did it on my computer.
Oh.
These were not bright women. But I did love them, especially Emily. Sometimes I go on Facebook to make sure they're still unhappy with their lives, and they are. Yeah. No, I did the foreword to Amy Alcon's book, Mean Girls. And I have a footnote in there that's just, I forget what the footnote is even in reference to, but it just says, sorry, my father loved me, Emily. But yeah, so, still a little spicy about it. In any case, it blew my mind that this could happen. Their conversation started like, I don't want to start anything between you two, but I just think that you should know. And so this was gossip. This was indirect aggression. And I started studying that, particularly amongst women. But what I came to realize later is that it's really all about manipulating people's affections. The best way to break me and hurt me was to take away my relationships. It's exclusion and relational aggression tactics like that are almost perfectly tailored to hurt women even more than men sometimes.
I was just going to ask you that because it the term mean girls, that girls have been mean to each other forever. And, we know high school's even one of the worst times for mean girls. But the same thing on how that hurts. And so does it hurt us more? Does it hurt women more or men more when they're betrayed? Because I went through a situation the last couple of years and lost a friendship of something that I thought we were going to be friends the rest of our lives. And it was it's hurtful. I was very sad about it and kept trying to go through the motions of what happened and all of that stuff. And I even did some stalking for a little bit for the exact same thing that you did. Is like, my life's amazing and yours is not. So it is what it is. But do women feel that loss of friendship like that more than men?
I mean, the data that I know really looks at exclusion, and there the data are equivocal. Like, some data say that it's equally painful to be excluded, but when there is a difference, it's that women report being more hurt by it. For all of these kinds of different acts of aggression that manipulate our relationships or sever our relationships, I would expect that women would be more hurt by it, not because women value friendship more than men do necessarily, but because women have fewer closer friends than men do. And so they put more eggs in each sort of, in these fewer friend baskets. And they also engage in more evaluative talk and self-disclosure with their friends. So if you lose that friendship, now you have a person out there with all of this information about you that can potentially ruin your life because, you told that person how much you really hated this other person.
So do you think because women, we grew up with the mean girls and we all had them? No matter what school or high school you went to, even college, we all had mean girls. does that, because we have a tendency to put everything into more of one basket than the other, it takes a lot for us to be closer to women? So we're more selective. What am I trying to say here? How does that affect us starting new relationships?
Oh, yeah. So Menelaus Apostolou did this study somewhat recently. It's probably like 100 students from Cyprus. He often studies, people that are in his nation, convenient samples like that. So take it with a grain of salt when it comes to generalizability. But one of the stumbling blocks that everyone reported to making new friends was trust. But that was especially the case for young women. Women really do face some different challenges when trying to get closer to other women. When I got the job at Oklahoma State and I was coming to tour it, I met Jen Bird Craven, who is an incredible woman, right? And I told her, because I felt comfortable with her, she was a fellow evolutionary person, and so we're family. I was like, Jen, just to tell you, I'm kind of afraid of other women. For the most part, it takes me a while to warm up to other women. Not that I'm not affectionate and warm and I don't respect you. I just am a little afraid given my past. And I don't know if that's the case for everyone, certainly. But women do tend to have more perturbations in their friendships than men do. We don't have the data on this, but I would imagine that women have a greater number of former best friends than men do. Their friendships end more. Because, Joe, what you were saying, like, you don't recall an end to a friendship for most people. It just sort of fades away.
Right.
That's what mostly, when you ask men about their former friendships, they're like, well, it's not former. We're still friends. Nothing happened. If I saw them, it would be great. Whereas more often women have stories of a real acrimonious ending, sometimes akin to, as acrimonious, if not more so, than some divorces.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just seeing what you went through with that person.
It was pretty painful. I wasn't understanding what was going on, and finally just had to accept it. It's over. I'm never going to know what really happened. It is what it is.
So Jamie, you mentioned that evolutionary researchers are like a family.
Yeah.
So can you explain? So you take an evolutionary psychology approach to friendship, and so if you could explain briefly to our listeners what that is and how it leads you to different kinds of questions from what psychologists who don't use evolutionary theory, how they would approach it.
Yeah, well, first of all, we're right. So there's that. Sorry.
That's true. I've been learning that hanging out with you guys. So that's a true statement.
I mean, the way that I look at friendship is that it's an outcome that you only realize once you solve a series of recurrent challenges. So you, throughout evolutionary history, and even, some non-human animals have had to find, make, and keep alliances. And so what I try to do is figure out, all right, if I had to build a robot and program a robot to do friendship, how would I do it? Well, first I need to identify the challenges that the robot has to meet to have friends. What are those? It needs to find friends. Okay. It needs to make and enrich these friends. So that needs to be broken down further. How does it really enrich these friendships and make friends? Well, it needs somewhat frequent interaction plus mutual attraction. How do we get those things? And you break it down further and further, sort of like a key fitting into a lock, right? And the better able you are to describe or to identify and describe the shape of that lock, the challenge, keeping friends, say, the better informed predictions you can make about the cognitive tools we use to solve them, the shape of the key to solve the challenge of keeping friends. Not that it's just a single key, but I sort of think of the mind like that. And we know that friendship is an adaptation. It helps us survive, pass greater numbers of genes into the next generation, thrive, and so on. So given this, our minds are probably well designed to solve these historically recurrent challenges like finding, making, keeping friends.
And you draw these analogies between the formation and maintenance, the choice of and maintenance of friendships. There are analogies with mate choice and so and evolutionary psychologists have come up with and debated for and a lot about mate choice criteria. So what can you say though about friend choice criteria? Like what makes a valuable friend?
Yeah, I mean, at base, the most valuable person to you is somebody who finds you most valuable, because friends sort of function to help us when we most need it. When we most need help, we look like a bad bet to strangers. Strangers aren't going to help us. By contrast, our friends have a stake in our continued welfare. So if our friends value us, if they find us irreplaceable, they're going to help us. So that would be the sort of chief criterion. That said, that's not something that you can look for in a friend, right? Oh, that person's going to find me irreplaceable. When we go out into the world and look for people, we want people who, in general, are kind, are funny or funny to us. They share our sense of humor, loyal to us. People who are intelligent, dependable, trustworthy is a really big one. And then there are some sex differences. Men want some more sort of friendliness and jocularity and formidability. Women want more emotional support. But in general, the biggies, it's the same thing as with mate choice. Both sexes want the same things at the top of the pyramid. Those things are kindness, loyalty, trustworthiness.
And so another analogous line of inquiry has to do with jealousy. So there's tons of research about sexual jealousy, but you've looked at friendship jealousy, right?
Yeah, we were some of the first people to do that. So Parker and colleagues had done it, and Joyce Benenson mentioned it. Turns out Rob Kurzban has a whole bit in his book on it, which I found out, or I guess reread only after I'd published this big JPS piece. So Rob beat me there again. He always has. So, the same way that you might feel jealous when you think your partner likes someone else, or maybe even someone else likes your partner, people feel jealous when they're worried about their friends replacing them with someone else, their friends making new friends, for example. And historically, the explanations for jealousy were, you've internalized Western capitalism. That's really mating jealousy. But, and I have some slides with these that I even show in talks, and I show people the quotes so they don't think I'm cherry picking here. But one of the co-editors of the Norton book on friendship, I think it is, said, if you feel friendship jealousy, it stems from a distorted or inappropriate view of what friendship is, that you just don't realize no one friend can solve all your problems. And this is kind of what Selman and colleagues think, and Parker and colleagues took off with, that there's sort of, you've not matured correctly or not matured at all if you still feel friendship jealousy as an adult. Now, in reality, it might be a negative emotion to experience, but it is a beneficial emotion to you for helping you hang on to your valued friends and friendships.
But wouldn't you say that this is a thing in psychology in general, is that,
negative emotions are bad.
They're bad, yeah.
Shame is bad. I watched a Brene Brown, I'm going to give a TEDx talk at UCLA. They're starting it again. And I watched a Brene Brown thing, and she's an incredibly compelling speaker. But the way that she thinks about shame is just like, shame is awful. We should get rid of shame. Like, okay, let's think this through. What would happen if we got rid of fear? You'd walk into the street. Why don't you go try walking into the street, Brene Brown? See how well that works out for you. I mean, So anyway, This drives me kind of crazy, because negative emotions are not fun to experience, but they're incredibly valuable to us. I want to feel pain when I put my hand on a flame. I want to feel fear when I'm trying to cross Wilshire.
And you want to feel jealous when valuable social partners are might be taken away from you.
Exactly. If the defection of their affection and resources can really affect me and my outcomes, you know? And yeah, this happens more in sort of young adulthood, but it does sort of pop up again in later life, particularly when people are living like in assisted living communities and retirement communities where everyone's living together, new people come in and out. And whenever you have that, of course, you're going to have these issues and shakeups in relationships.
So I've had that problem with some friendships, but I've been fortunate. I'm kind of the opposite. I've had friends for different aspects of my life and haven't had to deal with a lot of jealousy. And
so is there evidence for this kind of, I don't know, niche separation where, you know, you have like some friends are doing certain things for you, and then you want to sort of complement that with other friends who are doing other things for you?
You know, we're at some point going to do one of those K-cluster machine learning studies to see how people build friend groups. And to see if, you know, they sort of say you want 5 friends who are all 10 out of 10 on all your preferences, or, you know, you have some friends for this and some friends for that. But to the best of my knowledge, I don't know of any data that actually support the idea that some people have, you know, one friend for everything, and some people have niche friends, and some people do a combination. There were some data that a Steve Newberg student, I think Kathy Cottrell, had ages ago, and I don't know if they did anything with it. They showed me the data. I hope I still have it on some hard drive somewhere. Or they showed me the poster that men tended to have different friends for different jobs, whereas women tended to want their best friend with them for every job, a sort of all-use tool. But you would imagine that, yeah, you have different friends for different activities, right? And today, in our very sort of weird world, we have different social spheres in a way that we probably hadn't had throughout much of our evolution, right? So my work people never interact with my family people, who never interact with my college people, who never interact with my other people. And that might also sort of muddy this whole picture.
which brings me to my next question. So what is the biggest challenges friendships face today with technology, isolation, and even mental health?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the midst of a loneliness epidemic. Every other American is lonely, which is a subjective feeling of unmet social needs. And this literally shortens your life. So when lonely people are more likely to have cardiovascular issues, mental health problems. And there's one big meta-analysis that suggests that lacking social support has the same negative effect on your health as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. So a lot of people are lonely. They are aching to make friends. But at the same time, people are spending less time with their friends today than they did 20 years ago, 20 fewer hours per month on average. People have fewer friends. So in 1990, 3% of people reported having, 3% of people reported having no friends. Now that number is up between 12 to 25%. I think 1 in 5 single men in the U.S. has 0 friends. So the challenge is making friends, I think. And some of the hurdles there include time. People spend more time alone than they ever did. People are working gig economy jobs, so folks who have only a high school education have suffered more from the friendship recession than folks who have potentially more time and college degrees and can work differently, have more flexible schedules. There's also, I mean, technology certainly can help people, but the time spent alone is probably partially due to technology. You're scrolling on your phone, you feel like you're being social, you're watching Netflix.
And that's actually what I was going to say, is that especially the younger generation, the Gen Xers and even the older millennials, we were outside playing. We would, if you were bored, you went out your door and you found somebody, whether they were a friend or not. You just went and found somebody to go play with, and you became friends. So more kids are now on technology. They're sitting in front of screens. They're not going out and playing. How are they supposed to be making friends?
They're also overscheduled, a lot of them. I don't know. I guess they make friends at school. And for better or worse, this whole Jonathan Haidt don't let cell phones in thing might actually be helping. Because even just a few years ago here at UCLA, and maybe, Joe, you've seen this too, people would come into class. I teach a 350-person class for junior, senior psych majors, social psychology. They'd come into class and they'd talk to each other before class. But now they come into class and it's quiet. They're all on their computers or their phones doing something individual. I don't know, Joe, when you were teaching large undergrad classes, what was it like? Were people talking to each other?
It was, I saw the transition over the, so I left in 2022 and so, like year by year, the room got quieter and quieter. And by the time I left, that's how it was. Like everyone's like staring at a phone or
And that's a good question. So has it gotten worse since COVID?
So it does seem to have gotten worse since COVID, but we were trending in this direction before COVID, and we haven't completely rebounded since COVID. Yeah. So, and by the way, I should say it's not just the U.S., right? So the World Health Organization estimates that 1 in 6 people around the world are lonely, and that the loneliness there leads to an approximate 100 deaths per hour. It's crazy.
These are crazy. So what are some suggestions that you have to strengthen friendships? Now
we're getting to the applied part of it.
Okay, so let me preface all of this by saying I'm not even familiar with a single empirical and intervention for friendship, right? So there's the Art Aaron 36 questions thing that we call Fast Friends. I think we can't call it that because it's never been followed up for more than 6 weeks. So it's more of an acute liking induction, and maybe it works to make people friends. Maybe it doesn't. We're going to do sort of a mega study here where we're crowdsourcing ideas for actionable, scalable interventions that people can do to make friends or enrich friendships. And we'll test them in the lab and then deploy them in the world. We're also about to run Haewon Hong, my grad student, and Lisa Walsh, who's a former postdoc here at UCLA, who's now a professor in Singapore. She's a Sonia Lubomirsky student, and so she's very familiar with gratitude and those kinds of positive emotions. And they are about to do what we think is the first gratitude intervention to strengthen friendships. So writing your friend some letters of thank you, So we don't have these data, but if I had to extrapolate from what we do know, I would say telling your friend you're grateful. And I would also say asking your friend for help. I think that is something that we've stopped doing, again, related to technology, right? It's much easier for me to ask a TaskRabbit to hang my television or paint my wall than to try and schedule something with my friend and do it ourselves. But it's these small favors that ratchet up friendship. And if we're not doing them with or for each other, we're not ratcheting up our friendships. So I think asking for help is great.
it's kind of counterintuitive. I think some people would think, oh, you know, if I ask for help, I'm making a burden of myself. What I should do is offer help. But they think that it might turn out that actually asking for help is a more effective tactic than offering help.
I think so, but I also think you're exactly right to point out this sort of perception gap here. Because if you think about asking your friend for a ride to the airport, pretend you have to go to the Tulsa airport, not the Stillwater airport, right? It's a longer drive. You're like, I don't want to burden them. I'll just take an Uber. But if your friend can do it for you, I mean, very often, you know, put yourself in the space of somebody that's been asked a favor, and you're pretty happy to help a friend. So I think there's a huge perception gap whereby we think we're burdening our friends, but in reality, our friends would be so happy to be able to help us.
So I know you study social psychology, not individual different psychology, but what would you say to someone who says, well, I'm bad at friendship, I'm socially anxious, you know, this is the problems with me, is there, you know, and any kind of, and sort of, well, is there any kind of intervention that you would suggest?
I mean, what I'd probably say is, hello, husband, how have you been today? Because that sounds just like my partner. Sorry. I think one of the things that I've seen that I believe could work, especially for folks who are anxious like that, is practice. Now, guided practice would be the best, but we really don't have programs like that. That said, I think this is a place where AI would be useful for friendships. You practice calling an old friend. So the data suggests that people are as anxious to call an old friend they haven't spoken to in a while as talking to a new person. But the thing that worked in one of these studies to decrease that anxiety was practicing the call, figuring out what you'd say. So I would practice, and I would even try and practice with an AI. Have it talk back to you. You don't know what it's going to say. It might throw you a curveball. But that is the way that I would go about it to alleviate some anxiety. That is one of the things that, you know, I think for the younger folks, they're missing, right? They are not getting that daily practice. Mm-hmm. They don't have to talk to strangers. They don't have to go to the post office. They don't have to, you know, mingle and interact at the grocery store. They're not getting this practice. And when they are out and about, they have their headphones on or they're looking at Instagram anyway. This is potentially one of the reasons that they are failing at friendship so much and romance.
So I am one of those people that I'll be standing in line and just start talking to people.
Yeah, me too.
I'm sure that says a lot about me, but I just have conversations with people, especially if you're standing in line. How often should we realistically be reaching out to our friends?
Yeah, you know, I don't know of any data that have tried to sort of help optimize this. We should do this. Robin Dunbar once did a study where he gave people cell phones for 18 months and I believe paid the bills to get all the data. It's a really cool study, or several studies came out of that package. We don't know is the short answer. I would imagine that you are not going to overburden your friend by talking to them once a week, right? Yes, people are really busy, but they also want to connect. And so if you're the person reaching out and you do it once a week, you're not going to, you know, drive someone away by reaching out that often. But again, we don't know.
And I think that might be some of the problems that we have with friendships is we're all living such busy lives, and as you get older, it just gets busier and busier with your raising your children, having grandchildren, your grandchildren, and so forth. That sometimes we feel like, because even I do sometimes, I feel like I'm bothering my friends. That they're probably busy. Do they have time to talk? But once we do connect, then I could be on the phone for an hour or more with several friends. So,
well, and again, thinking about how technology can both hurt and help people's social lives. So I read there's a study. I just saw it on Twitter, but it was that amount of time spent on Instagram and TikTok, that was negatively correlated with people's psychological well-being. But the amount of time on messaging apps like WhatsApp, that was positively correlated. And so I think
doing well.
Yes, he is.
And so it seems like one of the things that the messaging apps do is they enable you to, again, so this is like primatological, this is the kind of thing that Dunbar would say, it's like you're able to service these relationships sort of very cheaply. Yeah, right. Just a few wisecracks a day on WhatsApp, and that's keeping the friendship alive.
I think these groups especially are massively underestimated for being able to do that, because you touch or groom more people with each message that you send.
That's right.
And there's just something about being part of a friend group that you don't get from one-on-one friendships. But I'm saying this personally, drawing on research and personal experience, because they're really extrapolating from research and drawing on personal experience, I should say, because we don't really know very much about the different benefits of having a friend group, I should say. So we don't study friendship, right? With my grad student, Haewon Hong and Bill Chopik at Michigan State, we've now looked at almost 30,000 peer-reviewed published articles in 7 top psych journals, including Evolution and Human Behavior, calling it a psych journal for this. We oversampled journals that are about close relationships. So this would be where friendship work would be published. And we went back from the first journal publication. So all of the publications in these 7 journals from 1964 to 2024. It looks like about 4% of these papers focus on friendship. And again, that's probably an overestimate because we are oversampling relationships journals. By contrast, it's 20-some% for romance, it looks like. And if you go to the HRAF, that ethnographic compendium where you could search keywords paragraph by paragraph, every paragraph that returns a find for friendship, there are 12 mentions of kinship. So social psychologists and people studying relationships are not only not looking at friendship, and most people aren't except in philosophy. Not only are we not looking at friendship with the same eye that we're looking at these other relationships, but when we do look at friendship, we almost always look at the friendship dyad, which really misses so much of what friendship is, does, and the challenges we have to face, because every dyad exists in a wider world. Most of the challenges that we face in having friends are probably these exponentially complex multi-person challenges, not just getting my friend to like me. You want to get your friend to like, I want to get my friend to like me better than my friend likes other people.
Right. So this podcast we do, it's mostly focused on the challenges and opportunities of middle age and early old age. So we expect that most of our audience are Gen Xers and younger boomers. And so what is known about, well, first of all, about maintaining friendships as we get older, and also about the challenges of forming new friendships. I read, it might have just been sort of like a popular account, like in popular media, but it was basically saying like, you don't expect too much about forming a new friendship like in your 50s. And so can you tell us what's known about this?
I mean, one of the things that we do know is that particularly for people 65 and up, because a lot of the friendship research is in the health area for older adults, that's the older term there. 1 in 4 in the U.S. is socially isolated, which is an objective measure. This kind of isolation and loneliness kills you. So it increases risk for dementia, 50%, risk of stroke, 30-some% if you don't have social connections. It's estimated that older folks lost almost $2 billion in fraud a couple years ago because they didn't have anybody to sort of consult on some decisions. So there are, health consequences, economic consequences, and it also feels to be alone and isolated. But particularly for older adults, having friends is the best predictor of subjective well-being, of them saying they're happy and they're having a good time. And it seems like it's even a better predictor of their longevity and health than living near family, than being close to neighbors. So especially for people 65 and up, according to the data, having friends is one of the best things that you can do for your health and happiness, period. Now, how you make new friends, maybe that's a different ballgame in some ways, but the ingredients are the same. You need to encounter some people more than once, ideally frequently, and some mutual attraction, which a lot of people translate to similarity. So a lot of people translate this and they say join a club, because there you'll re-encounter people who have similar interests, and therefore you're meeting the frequency and the mutual attraction components. And maybe that works, maybe that doesn't. We don't know.
Okay.
Is there a difference between, there's studies that show the difference between men and women and long-term relationships? Do women have a tendency to have more long-term friendships than men do?
I would imagine that that's true after young adulthood, once sort of these social competitiveness factors settle down, so finding a mate, keeping a mate, and all of that. Motherhood might massively disrupt friendships. I mean, parenthood in general, but particularly motherhood, because of all of the demands on a woman's time. And my student, Vanessa Zankich, is actually looking at how motherhood affects friendships for women who become mothers, but also the people that aren't mothers that might sort of lose their friends to this baby. So there are differences, but I would imagine that women are better at keeping relationships, period. And so I would imagine that they are better able to keep friendships as well and tend to them. In fact, I don't know if you guys have heard of this. Have you heard of man-keeping?
No.
So you would think that it's something to do with mating or jealousy, or maybe you make the mistake that I did and confuse it with manscaping, which is about...
That's actually the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah,
Was
not
another
manscaping.
manscaping?
But no, so there's a theoretical paper that came out in the Journal of Men and Masculinities maybe a year ago or so that said, it theorized that women feel responsible for basically getting their male partners friends. Extrapolating from the data that women are often the ones that keep in touch with family, even the, like husband's kin. The women are the ones that keep in touch with the husband's kin. And so if women feel this responsibility or are better at it, then maybe women are also trying to do that for men and their friends. Anecdotally, I've certainly seen this in academic women, where we move all over the country and try like hell to get play dates for our partners. We have just finished collecting data on a nationally representative survey for some friendship stuff and for some politics stuff with my student Elias Acevedo. Joe, I think you met him. He's amazing. Has some really cool work with me and David Pinsoff and Marty Hazelton on abortion attitudes, and which replicated in this nationally representative sample, which is really cool. But concerning the man-keeping stuff, we have some questions on there. So if you ask me in like a week or two, I might be able to tell you whether or not women actually feel this way, or it's just a sort of inference that some researchers are making because they, like me, have moved around the country with a partner that is anxious.
I do. I fully understand that. I had that with my ex, and you moved to a new area that you didn't know people, so I felt like I had to...
Oh, yes. You arrange a lot of our social life. That's for sure.
So, well, that just opens up to, we're definitely going to, hopefully, Jamie will be on with us again.
There's so much more
more to talk
Come
about.
to LA, or, you might not want to come back to LA, but come back to LA, or I'll meet you in San Francisco, which it turns out is a real city. And we can hang out where it's warm, because I love that. And talk about
absolutely.
friendship and watch people in LA be very transactional with their friendships.
LA is, because I lived there when I was younger, and it is a whole different world. And forming friendships in LA is on a whole different level.
It's weird. I think one of the difficulties for a lot of people here is how transient the population is, and with residential mobility and comes relational mobility comes, can I count on this person?
Absolutely. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate your time and talking about a very important topic that you have shown us has not had enough research. We don't talk about enough.
Your papers are amazingly impressive, and
Thank you.
I hope we're going to see a lot more of them.
I hope so too.
I
love
was
reading
reading
them.
one I'm working on, about to send to EHB, about people's estimations of the costs and benefits of different kinds of friends. So ideal, hypothetical friends, actual closest friends, ambivalent friends, so friends you wish you could get rid of but you can't, and then former friends.
I like that.
Yeah. So
Please.
that's coming, and anytime you want to talk about friendship, you know that I won't be able to shut up about it, kind of like right now, where I am shutting up, I promise.
We like that. We appreciate it. Always love having a conversation with you. Well, I look forward to seeing you soon, and if not, hopefully the next HBS.
Yes,
Not
yeah.
the next one, but the next one.
Yeah,
So-
so there's no CWES this year, I don't think, but SPSP will be in Philly. You guys should go, because the FPSych pre-conference will be rad.
I like going to the conferences. Being in the
We won't be very far from Philly.
Yeah, it'll be pretty close. So maybe I'll see you before then, but if not, I'll see you in Philadelphia, best city in the world.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Guys.
Well, that was great.
That was amazing.
Amazing information, and being able to talk about friendships and how different countries look at friendship is fascinating as well. And why hasn't there been more studies on friendship?
We should have Next time.
Next time. We definitely have to have Jamie on again, because she is just a wealth of information, and what she's studying is amazing.
And not all psychological research seems, compelling and interesting and useful. There's some of it seems like, they've just sort of like done this experiment, and they're like, okay, even if that's true, which I'm not really sure it is true, I don't care. But this is something that's sort of like,
Everybody.
Yes, it
This is friendships affect everybody, whether you have lots of friends, whether you don't. Research has shown the benefits of friendship in your health. And I know personally for me, the reason why I survived most of the stuff from my childhood is because of my friends. Whether they knew it or not, and I was fortunate enough to come back and thank a lot of my friends that were there for me. They didn't know what was going on at home, but over the years I've been able to thank them for what they did in my life. And it was amazing. Just the same as the girlfriend from high school, and what she did for me on the day we buried my dad at his funeral is remarkable, and something that will stay with me for the rest of my life. So I'm very fortunate. I'm very thankful that Jamie came on and we were able to talk about this topic, and look forward to having her on again on another episode. Please subscribe and support our podcast. Join us here each week, my friend, where you're sure to get a smile from lessons learned to mishaps. The adventures go on for miles here on The Professor and Heather Ann.
listening to The Professor and Heather Ann.